Listen, with playoff hopes on the line for the Detroit Lions, the Dallas Cowboys stepped up on the Monday Night Football stage and crushed their hopes 42-21. Even Des Bryant threw a touchdown. But the rookie Dak Prescott had another big night, throwing for over 200 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions, which brings up the question once again about the veteran still sitting on the bench. Here's what owner Jerry Jones had to say about Tony Romo.
Romo not to play him. We don't feel like that any game we'd get from him stepping out there and running a few plays or a series of plays or several plays would not be worth the risk.
So the question we pose, should the Cowboys play Tony Romo in Week 17? Jonathan?
Well, Fox, that's what your friends call you, right?
Yeah, so you can call me Dominique.
I love it.
All right, so I'm still trying to figure out why Jerry Jones feels the need to be in the locker room and be interviewed after every single game. But I'm past that at this point. If I was going to play Tony Romo, it would have been last night. That's a big if. Because I believe the philosophy that they're going with and that Jason Garrett is going with is the right one. Look how they played last night. 42 points. Dak was great. Zeke was great. Des Bryant was great. But moving forward, I'm not sitting a guy for 3 full weeks or even 2 full weeks. I'm not playing Tony Romo next week. I would have played him last night. Even if it's not starting him, I would have brought him in the second half. But once you got to a point where it was clear that they wanted to win that football game and it mattered to them to play that football game, you can't bring him in. Now, you play it out. This dude just tied Big Ben's rookie record, 13 wins. How about we get him 14? How about we play him through and allow Tony Romo to do what he's done all year, and that's sit on the bench?
Yeah, I mean, he tied Big Ben's rookie record as far as wins, and he's outplayed Big Ben as far as the season is concerned. However, I am still a resident. I'm the dictator of Antonio Ramiro Romo Island. I believe that me, and I guess Bomani, C and Fahey, those are the only people who remain on the island. Even Romo left the island, if you remember. He got up and said his piece about not being the leader of the team anymore. Even he left the island, but I remain on the island. I think he gives them the best chance to win. I know it's an unpopular opinion, and I don't mean to denigrate Dak. Dak's been tremendous. I think he's good enough, obviously, to get them there. But the things that he has had trouble with are things that experience would help. So when they lost to their only 2 losses so far this season to the Giants, what he had difficulty with was reading which side the zone blitz was coming on, and also making decisions in that situation and getting them in and out of good plays, which are things that you would think a 14-year vet like Tony Romo has seen all of those coverages and can adjust to. And he throws the ball pretty well also. But I have to acknowledge that Dak is tremendous, and his running ability, I think, is, and we saw it on display last night, it makes life a lot easier for Ezekiel, and it makes it easier for himself.
You're a player. You're a good teammate. I think you understand the value and having confidence in the guy that you are following straight down the field of the season of life.
All the field of life. Oh, Tony, Dak's a life coach now.
At this point, if you bring Tony Romo into the football game and you got all these guys that are still playing, because let's face it, you can't play backups for every single position. I'd love to have the rust off of Tony Romo. Would love that.
Right.
But if you're not willing to put him in significant periods of time when the game matters, not when you're up 21 points, but when it matters, then what's the point in putting him in at all? If Dak gets hurt, well, now you got the best of both worlds. Now you got a guy that can come in, and the world's not going to be overwhelming to him. But if you're Dak and you're a rookie and you've never experienced Week 17 in your life because your college season was over, well, now that can help Dak as well. I think there's a double-edged sword as to why.
If you believe in the rookie wall, wouldn't it make sense to take one less game off of him? That would make him to take one less game off of Dak.
Yeah, that's what I said. I would have done it last night.
And why can't you do it this? Why can't you do it this week?
Because I'm not going to sit a guy for that long.
Tony Romo's going to dress either way.
Right.
So you could have Dak play a few series and then have Tony come in and remain the rest of the game with the starters. It's not too late to knock the rust off of Tony. There might come a chance. I think there's a strong possibility that there'll come a chance in the playoffs when Dak is struggling. And would you feel much more comfortable bringing in a Tony Romo who's had some time?
Yes.
Or would you feel comfortable bringing in Tony Romo, who has had no time on the field? It seems like there's no loss to putting Tony out there now.
My only question is, if I were a Cowboys fan, I understand that he's 2-4 in the playoffs, talking about Tony Romo. So at this point, like, why not go with the rookie? Why not go with something fresh? Because we don't know what we're going to get out of him.
It's entirely unfair to judge quarterbacks on their playoff records. Football is an extremely interconnected and complicated game, and the quarterback has influence on the game, maybe a disproportional amount than other players, but they didn't lose those playoff games because of Tony Romo alone. And I think that if it was another position, if we weren't talking about quarterback, we were talking about D tackle or safety or something, the player would already be back in. I'm not sure why we have to treat the quarterback as if he's some type of almighty mythological position. He's not. He's a quarterback. He's a football player.
Because without a quarterback, and ask the Oakland Raiders right now, he is different. That position is different. When you look at teams that don't have a quarterback, guess what the translation is? There are a few examples, right. Usually they're not a playoff team. I don't care either about his playoff record because I'm not thinking about Tony Romo being the playoff quarterback.
Right.
Can you imagine for a second if they did the scenario that you're talking about and Dak Prescott leads them to a 13-3 or 14-2 season, and then all of a sudden they come out and they say, Tony Romo's our guy? It's just not reasonable to think that at this point that you can do that, even if they believe what you believe.
No, I certainly agree with you that it's difficult to do it now. I called for it way back when Tony first got healthy and when Dak Mania was at its height. I guess it's even higher now. But I think it's probably unlikely, and if I were the coach, I may not do it now. But I still think that there's a possibility that they'll need Tony at some point. So why not put him out there? It hurts you none to put him out there. And I don't necessarily agree with you. I mean, I understand that having a good quarterback helps you out. I don't necessarily agree with you that that's the only way to be successful in this league. I think there are plenty of teams that have proven otherwise, where you can build a team around a running game, build a team, which this team arguably is. You can build a team around a defense. You can win a Super Bowl. I mean, Von Miller, you heard of that guy?
I've heard of him, and they also, I know he didn't have a great game, but a guy named Peyton Manning. I'm a big believer in leadership as well.
Right.
So last night was December 26th.
You don't have to be a quarterback to be a leader, to be the team's leader. I've been on multiple teams, and I can't name one where the quarterback was the guy that we all went to for leadership.
Oh,
I also haven't won a Super Bowl, so maybe.
My point is, of course, I will always step back to you when it comes to playoffs and Super Bowl victories. However, you brought up the Broncos from a year ago, and they did have a great defense. And Peyton Manning did not play well. But guess what they had when they walked onto that field? They had the belief that the guy that was under center was their leader. And to me, that serves volumes if I'm a football player. Yeah. But last night was December 26th.
I don't think that's true. They did not believe in Peyton Manning last year. They did not believe in his ability to throw the ball. They did not believe in any mythological...
But they believed in his ability to lead. And so that's a big deal.
They don't care about leadership. They care about throwing touchdowns.
I will say this. I don't want my quarterback sitting from December 26th to January 14th before he plays a meaningful game. That, to me, is the biggest reason I would not play Tony Romo.
Well, the bottom line, the Cowboys are in a very good position. They've already clinched home field advantage throughout the NFC playoffs. But getting that win last night gave them their 7th straight win at home, and they matched their franchise record with their 13th win of the season. They are on a roll, but are the Cowboys a lock to reach the Super Bowl? Dominique? I won't call you Fox. We're not.
We are friends.
Oh, we are? Okay.
Fox.
But he
can call me Neek. Don't call me. I don't like that. You call me whatever you want. But this guy.
Apparently we're not friends.
We were friends before it started. We may be friends afterwards.
The pre-show meeting is what did it.
But once we are between the white lines, so to speak.
I like it.
Enemy.
I like this.
I'm cool with that.
All right. So what do you think about? Do you think the Cowboys? I'm sorry. I totally
That's fine.
Do you think the Cowboys?
Absolutely not. I think that it's hard for anyone to be a lock ever, especially if you remember the undefeated Patriots. Even they lost in the Super Bowl, which arguably they were the best team that ever been constructed. So anyone can lose. This year is particularly the case because there are no great teams in this league. So I think that given the fact that that Dak struggles against the zone blitz and that their defense has been quite suspect, they could lose quite a few shootouts. And there are some prolific offenses. I think that the Falcons have an all-time great offense right now, and the Cowboys should be afraid of them. Obviously, they should be concerned about the way Aaron Rodgers is playing right now. And then there's the Giants, who they can't see, the only team that they can't seem to figure out how to beat. I think that a lot of teams can knock the Cowboys off.
You know, I ticked off a lot of Giants fans a couple of weeks ago because I tweeted out and I said, if I'm watching this football game right now, I'm forgetting the 2 Super Bowls because of how bad Eli Manning continues to play football. I just don't think he's a very good quarterback at this point of his career. With that being said, they have beaten the Cowboys twice, which tells me there's a team in the playoffs right now that has figured the Dallas Cowboys out, which is why my answer is a capital no, they're not a lock to reach the Super Bowl. But I also believe more than just the New York Giants, that Green Bay, for some reason, people don't want to listen to Aaron Rodgers when a few years ago, he said, relax. And this year, when they were 4-6, he said, listen, we are good enough to run the table and make it to the playoffs. We all laughed. We all said, you know, he's getting past his prime. He's not good enough. And guess what they've done? 5 in a row. And I think they're a lock to beat Detroit this weekend and win the division and go into the playoffs. So if I'm taking Aaron Rodgers, as much as I love Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys, if they're facing off against them in the, let's say, the NFC Championship game, how do you root or how do you go against Aaron Rodgers in that particular game? That's why I think the Cowboys
are rooting for the Packers. But you're saying, is that what?
No.
A little,
I was speaking from a fan's perspective.
I know you were. I had to call you out a little bit there.
I don't know that I necessarily agree that the Packers are going to beat the Lions next week. I think the Packers have gotten on a roll, and I think Aaron Rodgers anything he says at this point should be respected. They certainly have the capability, but I'm not sure that the Lions won't beat them. I think that despite the fact that they had a poor showing last week, I think that Terrell Austin and that defense they have been impressive, and they could give Aaron Rodgers some trouble, and that Green Bay Packers defense is certainly nothing for anyone to be afraid of at this point.
I'm trying to figure out, I know we had an early meeting today, correct?
We did.
Did you go to bed early last night?
Uh-oh.
Or did you stay up and watch that football game?
I stayed up and watched the football game. The defense was not great there, but Aaron Rodgers, they don't have a running game. The Packers don't have the running game I think we often forget that football, like basketball, is about matchups. And I think that the Cowboys are a bad matchup for the Lions. I don't necessarily think that the Packers are as bad a matchup for the Lions as the Cowboys are. So just because they got dominated last night does not mean that they can't beat. You can't just go get excited and believe in this momentum nonsense. Aaron Rodgers is playing well, but that doesn't mean that he will never lose again. And the Lions lost. It doesn't mean that they can't win again.
Dom, can I call you Dom? Dominique?
We're not.
I don't even know what I'm going to call you. I always like to tie my arguments together. It kind of puts a nice bow around the Christmas holiday.
Nice.
And I just got done saying, if I'm not mistaken, how important the quarterback position is to going into the playoffs. Did I say that?
Yep.
I believe I did. So if I want a quarterback in the NFC to lead my squad and the squad that I think should be the favorite heading into the playoffs, and I'm okay if it's a wild card team or division team and they have to play an extra game, I'm okay with that because I think Aaron Rodgers is a repetition guy. And I don't think he necessarily benefits from an off week like some teams could or some players would. But I believe Aaron Rodgers moving forward, even without a running game, Jordan Nelson, to me, is playing an incredible high level and showed that against Minnesota. And I think now his other wide receivers are not dropping the football like they were earlier in the year.
So I think you are just about to make my point for me where you went, Jordy Nelson is playing good, and then you didn't touch any more of those fingers. Football is a team game.
I'll take Devontae Adams.
Football's a team game, and having a great quarterback is very important and makes your team much better off. But if you can't go through those fingers on defense, you can't go through those fingers on more receivers and running backs and offensive line, I am not going to bet on you. A quarterback's not enough alone to put a team on his back and take them to the Super Bowl. I think that the Lions are a much more well-rounded team right now, and I think I might bet on them if we were wagering, which we should.
And I'm like a true defensive guy.
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
And we will figure out what that is. And I've never been one, if anybody follows me on Twitter, to call anybody out, especially anybody that has anything to do with the show that you're on all the time. However, we will do that.
Okay.
And then next Monday, after the Packers beat the Lions, and I also, for the sake of this argument, I don't want to sleep on the Atlanta Falcons,
Yes.
who have had a tremendous offense and at times have looked nearly unstoppable from that side of the football. So we can talk Giants, we can talk Packers, but I think the reason we don't talk the Falcons is because there is a mentality around the Atlanta football team and all Atlanta sports, to be honest with you, that once they get to when it matters, they just don't win.
Yeah.
And that stings for them.
I started this conversation by saying the Falcons. The first team came up. They are prolific offensively. They found a little bit of a pass rush late, so far late in the season, and they have defensive backs that can make plays. I think that could be a recipe for a disaster for any team that they play, because you're going to have to win in a shootout. There's no defense in the NFL that can stop them at this point, in my opinion.
How much do you think seeding matters in the NFC right now and when teams play each other?
I mean, I think it matters to some degree. I think especially for younger teams like the Cowboys, traditionally, you're more comfortable playing at home. I think we go back to last year, was it Arizona that had to go all the way across the country to play, and they kind of showed up late to that game? I think that's a real thing, and kind of your body clock matters. So I think it matters in indoor, outdoor. When you talk about Green Bay, that advantage matters. The Falcons aren't the same in Green Bay as they would be in Atlanta.
For the wager, should we do maybe a lap around campus? Maybe in Boston?
And film it?
No,
yeah, film it.
I stopped running for free a long time ago.
I agree with that. We'll come up with something by the end of the show.
You have a radio show, right?
Last time I checked.
Okay.
You want to come on it?
No, I don't want to be on it. I just wanted you to. I just want you to call it the Dominique Foxworth Show for a day.
Oh, okay. We're gonna let this marinate.
Whichever
You know what? I like where you're going. We'll get it.
Okay, we will. We definitely will. We'll let that marinate for a little bit. We're gonna have obviously a lot of fun here on the show, and we're gonna have fun with all of you guys on Twitter. So head on over to Twitter. Tweet us your best sports questions for the guys using #FTFanTake. Ask anything you want. Be creative. We'll read. Ask the best ones on the air later in the show.